Good morning, guys, and welcome to Kyiv. I'm standing here in Maidan Square, the site of the famous protests, the center of Kyiv, and you can see behind me here the famous monument to independence. So today's my first full day. I came here last night. I spent some time walking around, and I thought the thing to do on today would be to make a sort of first impressions video. Of course, I've been here for one day. I've been here for, at the moment, less than 24 hours. Any impressions I have may change over the oncoming days, and if I was to stay here for 2 weeks, a month, or even a year, I'm sure my impressions would be completely different. So just a disclaimer, these are my first impressions and they might be completely wrong. And as I know, this is YouTube, so I expect you to correct me down below, no matter whatever I say. So if we take a look here, we can see there's people around. But one thing I noticed compared to Moscow, for example, or London, it's really empty. There's like no people here. Today's actually the 8th of January. Yesterday was the 7th. It was Orthodox Christmas. So I thought, okay, it's Christmas in Ukraine. People are spending time with their families. People are inside. But I'm here on the 8th. Not Christmas, not a particularly special day in Ukraine, but there is almost nobody here. Very strange. It's not what I expected at all. But I don't know, maybe there's a reason for that. If I'm wrong, you can tell me below why. So one of my first impressions was just how similar it is to Moscow. Now, I know it's a Soviet city in many ways. Just like Moscow, lots of the buildings come from the same kind of era. Both Moscow and Kyiv are a lot older than the Soviet Union, of course, but a lot of the buildings which stand today come from that time. So if we look right behind me here, there's a building right here, just behind this Christmas tree. You look here. Would you be surprised to see this kind of building in Moscow? Not at all. And I'm going to play some videos over me speaking of other buildings which I think would look not out of place in Moscow too. We see the same sort of Stalinist architecture style all over the city that we see in Moscow. So that's one thing that was similar to Moscow, but there's lots of other things, and I know it's because of the Soviet Union. It's because of, in the Soviet Union, they had a policy of making everything uniform. But even though Ukraine has been an independent country for quite some time, lots of things are still very similar. I was walking down one of the streets, Vladimir Street, and I noticed that there was some signs on some buildings, government buildings, schools, and in Russia they have them too. They say school number 100 or something, and it has maybe the name of who the school is named after, or they'll have a government building that says this is the departure of infrastructure or something. And in Ukraine, the signs are exactly the same as you see in Russia, but they're in blue instead of red. So I looked at this and I thought, wow, this is very similar. I'll put a video here of them. There's also some other things I noticed. Even some of the fonts I see around are just the exact same as Moscow. So if you go and walk down to the Kyiv metro, and you'll see a sign that says whatever the name of the station is. So the place I'm living at is Olimpiska, the Olympic station, and you see a sign, and they have them all over here, but the fonts are the exact same as the Moscow metro. And in fact, I noticed this when I was in the area of the station Teatralna, because in Moscow we have one that says it's called Teatralnaya, which is the difference between Ukrainian and Russian. And I noticed that the sign is the exact same, like the exact font, the exact lettering, but there's just a ya missing from the end, and I'll play that one right here. So yeah, one thing I noticed right from the start is Kyiv is so similar to Moscow. It just seems to be a lot smaller. Another one of my first impressions here in Kyiv was just how hilly it is. I had no idea about that at all. It feels like I'm in San Francisco or something, or maybe Lisbon. I walk down the street and I think, okay, I need to turn left down here. I'll turn the corner, and without expecting it, a huge hill comes out of nowhere. I was walking to the cathedral last night. Everything was nice and flat, apart from a little uphill from my hotel, from my Airbnb, sorry. And I came into this area, and I turned left up a street. Actually, it's a street right behind me. And when I walked up the street, all I saw was a hill up to the church, which went like, whoo. It was, sorry about that, a crazy woman just approached me. So the hill goes up like this, all the way up, and you can see the church on the top of the hill. So I thought, okay, maybe that's just where the church is. Churches, castles and stuff like that are often on top of hills. But as I walked around the city, there's hills just everywhere, completely unexpected. I can't work out what the terrain is here because it seems to go up and then down and up and then down. It's very strange in terms of that, and it really feels like I was in San Francisco. So just walking around the city at night in my boots. Obviously I'm wearing boots today because it's absolutely freezing and I'm walking through snow. But what I didn't really expect was just how tiring it would be walking around the city, just a light stroll. So yeah, that's another one of my first impressions is it's just so hilly here. Something else I've noticed here in Kyiv is the role of the Russian and the Ukrainian language here. Almost all the signs around the city are just in Ukrainian. There's absolutely, well, not absolutely no Russian, but I'd say 90% of the time signs are just in Ukrainian. Which is strange because as I walk around the city and I hear people speaking, it seems to me that I hear Russian 50% of the time and Ukrainian 50% of the time. So I have a feeling that there's a lot high percentage of inhabitants here who speak Russian instead of speaking Ukrainian. But the signs are almost always only in Ukrainian, and the second language seems to be English. So if we come to a tourist sign here, we see a tourist sign here, we see two languages here, and it's English and Ukrainian with no Russian to be seen. It's very strange. In fact, I was in McDonald's, and you know when you're in McDonald's, you go to the big screen and there's a selection of languages at the bottom. In the UK, we normally have about 6 languages. You'll have English and Welsh, but also you'll get a few options of common tourist languages, French, Spanish, German, etc. Here they just had 2 options, and it was English and Ukrainian. And I really expected to see Russian there. So yeah, that's one of my other impressions here, that first impressions I've noticed. There's lots of Russian speakers around, but almost no Russian language in official signage, or even in unofficial stuff, like in McDonald's. One also thing I've noticed here, just in the last few minutes while filming, you can see behind me there's a couple of police officers standing here, a man and a woman. And in Russia, when I film, I often get approached by police asking me questions. Why are you filming? What are you filming? Can I see your documents? Stuff like that. There's quite a big suspicion to people filming, especially when they're speaking English to a camera and they're not officially journalists. But here, I've absolutely had no reaction whatsoever. Even the people don't really look at me. They do a little bit, but in Russia, I'll get stared at. I'll see babushki staring at me. Here we see 2 more policemen. You see that? Didn't even look at me. It's very strange. When I film, for example, in the Moscow metro or on Kremlin, near the Kremlin on Red Square, I often get stared at by police and stared at by passers-by. Here, everyone's just ignoring me. It's very, very cool feeling, to be honest, that nobody really cares. So yeah, that's another impression that I actually got during the making of this video. I thought, why are they not approaching to me? Why are they not asking me? But yeah, the police here, they just don't care. One of the first things a Westerner might notice when they first come to Ukraine is about the money, because everything here compared to the UK, compared to the USA, compared to Western Europe, and in many cases even compared to Russia, is so cheap. I got a taxi last night, an Uber, at like 1 a.m. from the center here to my Airbnb, which is 30 minutes away by foot, and it costs 40, it costs only 40, 41, maybe 41. In rubles, that's 100. In pounds, that's about £1 10 pence. In the UK, to step in a taxi costs about £5. So everything here is so cheap. And I mentioned McDonald's previously. I mean, that's the first place I went to get a coffee here when I was absolutely freezing. Of course I didn't eat in there, but that's the first place I went to get a coffee. And I looked at the prices, and everything is so damn cheap compared to the UK. Actually, there they have similar prices to Russia, a little bit cheaper, but when you just walk around the city, you look at the price of stuff, You can go to high-class restaurants. I'm going to one tonight, and I've looked at the menu, and it's something that you'd expect to spend £100 a head on for in the UK, and here it's going to be much cheaper than that. I'll be lucky to spend £15. I mean, it's a really cheap place. Of course, the reason for that is not exactly positive. Ukraine has gone through a massive economic downturn since 2014, since Crimea, since the war in the Donbass. It's really suffering a lot at the moment. So the average person can't really afford to spend loads of money on stuff like that, on eating out, so the prices have to be a little bit lower. But for a tourist, come here with some sort of money you'd expect to go to Barcelona or Rome or Paris for just a couple of days. You can probably stay here for a week minimum. Yeah, Ukraine's really, really, really cheap. And that's, of course, one of the first things the average tourist will notice. Angry. Liverpool.
Welcome to Ukraine.
Thank you.
On camera, my friend, for the pictures
No,
together.
no, no, no.
Come on.
No, no. Another thing I noticed here in Ukraine, actually, well, more like Kyiv, is that there's quite a lot of good English speakers here. People always told me, before I came to Ukraine, I spoke to my English friends, I spoke to my Russian friends and friends of other nationalities who'd been to Ukraine, and they said, look, it's a great country, it's beautiful, it has great culture and history, but you have to have a warning that not many people speak English and you're gonna have to speak Russian to them. I was like, okay, it's fine, I speak Russian, not a problem. But one thing I've noticed while being here, so many young people speak really good English. I'm often approached by people on the street and they see me filming and they speak to me in fluent English. Lots I'm trying to sell stuff, admittedly, but in Russia, in Moscow, I don't see that. And also in other countries in Eastern Europe, where I've traveled to, and not only in Europe, all over the world, basically, there are a small selection of people who speak fluent English, and the rest of them know a little bit here and there. But as an English person here, and considering the international language of communication, the lingua franca at the moment in the world is English, for you, my followers, who obviously speak English, that's why you're watching this video, one thing you can see and one thing you should know before you come to visit Ukraine is, in the center, people do speak English. Now, outside of Kyiv, I'm sure it's a completely different story, but here it seems that it's okay. So yeah, that's another one of my impressions. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. What time work? Where are you from?
England.
Oh, are you traveling?
Yeah.
How many countries you visit in life?
In my life?
Yeah, 1,000 countries visit?
No, 40.
40 countries.
Yeah.
Assam, Mars, Min.
I'm standing now a little bit higher over Maidan Square. You can see right behind me, and this is where I'm gonna end this video. This has been a short video about my impressions of Kyiv in less than 24 hours of being here. So I please want you to take that in mind when you listen to this, that many of them can be completely wrong. And in 1 week or a month or a year, for a long time after staying here, maybe I'd have completely different impressions, but I'm not here for long, I'm here for only a few days. And that's just my initial impressions. So if they're wrong or misinformed, I want you to comment below, tell me where I'm wrong, and I'd be happy to listen. I know YouTube comments can be very, very toxic, and I see arguments in my comments all the time, but please keep it civil, tell me where I'm wrong, and I'd like to learn just as much as you. Maybe in a few days I'll be able to offer some corrections. So yeah, here we are, this is the end of the video. Thank you very, very, very much for watching. There'll be a couple more videos from Kyiv coming in the next few days. Thank you very much. Please like this video, please comment, and please subscribe if you'd like to see more. Bye bye.